Emily Carter had always imagined that the night before her wedding would feel magical. For years, she had pictured it in her mind's soft lights, quiet excitement. Maybe a glass of wine while looking out the window and thinking about the life ahead. It was supposed to be a peaceful moment before the biggest day of her life. But as she sat alone in her hotel room in downtown Boston, the feeling inside her chest was not excitement. It was something else. The room was beautiful, decorated with white roses that Daniel's assistant had arranged earlier that evening. The curtains were slightly open, and through the tall glass window, Emily could see the city glowing under the rain. Streetlights reflected on the wet pavement, and cars moved slowly through the quiet night. The wedding venue was only 10 minutes away. Tomorrow afternoon, she would walk down the aisle in front of family, friends, and business partners who had traveled from all over the country to celebrate her marriage to Daniel Brooks. Everyone said she was lucky. Daniel was rich, confident, respected, and incredibly successful. At 38, he owned a growing tech company and had already built a reputation in the business world. He was calm, charming, and always seemed to know exactly what to say. When they met 2 years ago at a charity event in New York, Emily had been instantly drawn to his confidence. He was older than her, more experienced, and he made her feel protected in a way she had never experienced before. Their relationship moved quickly. Within 6 months, they were living together in his apartment overlooking the river. A year later, he proposed during a weekend trip in Napa Valley, standing under a quiet sunset with a small velvet box in his hand. It had felt perfect, or at least it had looked perfect. Emily slowly leaned back against the headboard of the large hotel bed. Her phone rested on the nightstand beside her, and the soft light from the lamp filled the room with a warm glow. She glanced at the wedding dress hanging near the closet door. It was elegant and simple, exactly the style she had wanted. The fabric shimmered softly under the light, and the long veil rested carefully over the hanger. Earlier that evening, her best friend Lily had helped her try it on again just to make sure everything fit perfectly. "You look incredible," Lily had said with excitement. Emily had smiled. But even then, there had been a strange quietness. Inside her now, sitting alone, she tried to understand why. Her phone vibrated suddenly on the table. The screen lit up with Daniel's name. Emily picked it up. The message was short. "Sleep well tonight. Tomorrow, your life begins." She read the words twice. Most brides would probably feel comforted by a message like that. But Emily stared at the screen longer than expected. "Tomorrow, your life begins." Did that mean her life hadn't truly begun yet? The thought made her uncomfortable. She placed the phone down again and stood up slowly, walking toward the window. The rain outside had grown stronger, and the city. Lights looked blurred through the glass. Boston felt quiet tonight. Most of their wedding guests were already asleep in nearby hotels, preparing for tomorrow's celebration. Daniel himself was staying in a different hotel across the city. Following the traditional idea that the couple should not see each other before the ceremony, Emily rested her hand lightly on the cold window. 2 years with Daniel. She tried to think about the happiest moments. There had been many beautiful experiences. Luxury restaurants, private trips, elegant parties. Daniel loved impressive places and impressive events. He knew important people, and being beside him often felt like stepping into a world of success and confidence. But as Emily thought about those memories, something strange became clear. Most of them involved crowds. Very few involved quiet moments with just the two of them. The realization made her chest tighten slightly. Maybe she was just nervous about the wedding. That was normal. Everyone said brides often felt overwhelmed the night before. She stepped away from the window and walked to the mirror near the dresser. The reflection staring back at her looked calm, but her eyes revealed a different story. Her long brown hair rested over her shoulders, and she still wore the soft blue dress she had chosen for the evening. She looked like someone ready for a beautiful future. But she didn't fully feel like that person. Emily sighed quietly and turned off one of the lamps, making the room slightly darker. Maybe she just needed sleep. She walked toward the bed again and pulled back the blanket. Just as she sat down, a sound broke the silence. Knock. Emily froze. The knock came from the door. It was slow and deliberate. She looked at the clock on the wall. It's 11:47 p.m. Her eyebrows pulled together in confusion. Who could be visiting this late? Her first thought was Lily, but Lily had gone back to her own room hours earlier. Maybe hotel staff. The knock came again. 3 calm knocks. Emily stood slowly. Hello? She called toward the door. No answer. Only the sound of rain outside. For a moment she considered ignoring it, but curiosity pulled her forward. She walked across the room and stopped in front of the door. Her hand rested on the handle. Another knock, this time softer. Emily opened the door slightly. The hallway light spilled into the room and she saw them. 3 men stood quietly outside. They were dressed neatly in dark jackets and colored shirts. They looked professional, almost like businessmen or consultants. But it was strange to see 3 unfamiliar men standing outside her room so late at night. Emily opened the door a little wider, but kept her hand firmly on the edge. Yes, she asked carefully. The tallest man stepped forward slightly. His voice was calm and polite. Miss Carter. Emily nodded slowly. Yes. The man gave a small, respectful nod. We were sent here by Daniel Brooks. Emily blinked in surprise. Daniel sent you? Yes. Her confusion grew. Why would Daniel send 3 strangers to her hotel room at midnight? The tall man reached into his jacket and pulled out a small white envelope. He asked us to give you this. Emily hesitated, but she eventually reached out and took the envelope from his hand. Her heart began beating faster. The envelope was simple. No writing on the outside. She opened it carefully and pulled out a folded piece of paper. K. Immediately, she recognized the handwriting. Daniel's. Emily unfolded the note and read it. Before tomorrow, there are a few things you need to understand about the life you're entering. These men will explain everything. Her stomach tightened. She looked up at the 3 men again. What does this mean? The men exchanged a brief glance. The tall man spoke again. Your fiancé asked us to spend some time with you tonight. Emily stared at him. Spend time? Doing what? To talk. Talk about what? The second man finally spoke. It's part of an agreement Daniel made. Emily's confusion turned into frustration. An agreement with who? The third man answered calmly, with himself. Emily shook her head slightly. I don't understand any of this. The tall man gestured politely toward the room. May we come in? Emily hesitated again. Everything about this situation felt unusual, but the men didn't seem threatening. They were calm, respectful, and patient. And Daniel had clearly sent them. Still, something about the note bothered her. Before tomorrow, there are things you need to understand. Understand what? Emily stepped back slowly. Fine, she said quietly. The 3 men entered the room. They walked in calmly, looking around briefly before sitting near the small table by the window. Emily closed the door behind them. The quiet click of the lock suddenly made the room feel very different. The rain outside continued falling steadily. Emily turned toward them, crossing her arms slightly. Okay, she said. You're here, now explain. The tallest man leaned forward slightly. My name is Marcus Reed. He gestured to the others. This is Julian Hayes. The second man nodded politely. And this, Aaron Cole. The third man gave a small smile. Emily remained standing. Why are you here? Marcus folded his hands calmly. Because Daniel wanted us to meet you tonight. Emily's patience was fading. Marcus studied her carefully for a moment before answering. Because tomorrow you marry him. Emily frowned. Yes, I know that. Marcus nodded. But tonight, he wants to know something important. Emily's heart beat faster again. What? Marcus looked at her with steady eyes. The tension in the room quietly began to grow. Emily stood quietly in the center of the room, looking at the three men Daniel had sent. The rain outside had slowed, but the silence inside the room felt heavier than before. The wedding dress hanging near the closet door moved slightly as the air conditioner hummed. For a moment, no one spoke. Marcus Reed finally leaned forward and placed his hands on the table. His expression was calm, almost thoughtful, as if he had done this kind of conversation many times before. "Emily," he said gently, "Daniel asked us to talk with you tonight. Nothing more." Emily looked at him with disbelief. "You're strangers! Why would he send strangers to talk to me about something so important?" Julian Hayes spoke next. His voice was softer, almost friendly, because sometimes people speak more honestly with strangers. There's no pressure, no expectations. Emily shook her head slowly. "This is still strange." Aaron Cole gave a small smile. "It is strange, but Daniel believes important things should never be rushed, even when a wedding is only ours." "Away!" Emily crossed her arms. "Then he should have talked to me himself." Marcus nodded slightly. "That's true. But Daniel believes he might influence your answers without meaning to. He didn't want that." Emily sighed and walked toward the chair across from them. She sat down slowly, still holding the note Daniel had written. Her fingers pressed lightly against the paper as if she could somehow understand more by touching it. "Fine," she said. "Ask whatever you came here to ask." The three men exchanged brief looks. Marcus seemed to take the role of leading the conversation. "When did you meet Daniel?" he asked. Emily answered quickly. 2 years ago, at a charity event in New York. What was your first impression of him?" Emily thought for a moment. He was confident. Very confident. People listened when he spoke. Julian nodded. "Did that attract you?" "Yes," Emily admitted. "At the time, it did." Aaron leaned back in his chair. "And now," Emily hesitated. "Now I see more sides of him." "What kind of sides?" Marcus asked. Emily exhaled slowly. "Daniel lives a very controlled life. Everything is planned. Every meeting, every trip, every event. Sometimes it feels like his entire world is a schedule." Marcus listened carefully. "And where do you fit into that schedule?" Emily didn't answer immediately. She looked down at the table. "I suppose I'm part of it." Julian leaned forward slightly. "Do you feel like a partner or more like someone who supports his life?" Emily looked up at him quickly. The question hit deeper than she expected. "I never thought about it like that," she admitted. Aaron spoke gently. "That's the point of tonight." Emily sighed again. "You keep saying that." Marcus nodded. "'Cause Daniel asked us to help you think honestly before tomorrow." Emily turned her head toward the wedding dress hanging near the closet. The soft white fabric looked beautiful under the light. She had imagined walking down the aisle in it hundreds of times. But now it looked different, almost like it belonged to someone else. Marcus followed her gaze. "Beautiful dress." "Yes," Emily said quietly. "Do you feel excited to wear it tomorrow?" The question seemed simple, but Emily found it difficult to answer. "I thought I did," she said after a moment. Julian watched her carefully. "And now," Emily looked back at the men. "Now I feel unsure." Aaron nodded slowly, as if he expected that answer. Marcus continued calmly. "Emily, Daniel respects honesty more than anything else. That's why he sent us." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Then why not just ask me directly?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Because he knows himself. If he asked you face to face, he might try to convince you instead of listening." Emily considered. It sounded very much like Daniel. He was persuasive, confident. Sometimes too confident. Aaron leaned forward slightly. "Let's try another question." Emily nodded. Double quotes. When was the last time you and Daniel had a long conversation about your feelings? Emily searched her memory. Dinners, trips, parties, business events. But conversations about feelings. I can't. Remember, she admitted quietly. Julian spoke gently. Do you think he knows what scares you? Emily shook her head. Do you know what scares him? Aaron asked. Emily paused again. No, she said. Marcus folded his hands together. Oh, that doesn't mean you don't care about each other. But it means something important might be missing. Emily felt a strange tightness in her chest. I thought love would grow after marriage, she said quietly. Julian nodded. Sometimes it does. And sometimes? Emily asked. Aaron answered carefully. Sometimes people realize they built a life around comfort, not connection. The words stayed in the air. Emily looked at the rain outside again. Daniel is a good man, she said. He's kind. He supports me. He's never treated me badly. Marcus nodded. We know. Then why would he question this? Emily asked. Marcus took a breath. Because Daniel has seen many marriages fail. Business partners, friends, even his own parents. Emily looked at him. He told us something earlier tonight. What? Marcus spoke slowly. He said, I would rather lose her tonight than trap her in a life she doesn't truly want. Emily felt a sudden wave of emotion. Those words didn't sound like the confident businessman everyone knew. They sounded like a man who was quietly afraid. Aaron continued. Daniel wants certainty. Julian added, not perfection, just honesty. Emily leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about the first time Daniel had held her hand. The proposal in Napa, the beautiful ring, now resting on her finger, but she also remembered the quiet moments when she had wanted to talk and Daniel had been busy with work calls. The evenings when they sat at dinner but spoke mostly about schedules and travel plans. The way their relationship often felt. More organized than emotional. Marcus watched her carefully. Emily, he said softly, we are not here to convince you to leave him. Julian nodded. And we're not here to convince you to marry him either, Aaron added. We're only here to hear your answer. Emily opened her eyes. My answer to what? Marcus leaned forward slightly to the question Daniel asked. Room became completely quiet. Emily's heart beat faster. What question? She asked. Marcus looked directly at her. Do you still want to marry him? The words felt heavier than anything said that night. Emily looked toward the wedding dress again, then toward the rain outside. The window. Then down at the engagement ring on her hand. She slowly removed it. The diamond sparkled under the light. Julian and Aaron watched. Silently, Marcus waited patiently. Emily rolled the ring gently between her fingers. For months, she had been moving toward tomorrow's wedding as if it were the natural next step. But tonight, something had changed. She was finally asking herself the question she had avoided. Do you still want to marry him? She stood up slowly and walked toward the window. The rain had almost stopped now. Boston's streets looked calm again. She imagined the ceremony. Tomorrow, the music, the guests, Daniel standing at the end of the aisle, waiting. Would she walk toward him with a full heart, or with quiet doubt hidden behind a smile? Emily turned back toward the men. Her voice was calm but emotional. I care about Daniel. Marcus nodded. But caring isn't always the same as loving, she continued. Aaron listened closely. Emily took a deep breath. I think Daniel deserves someone who looks at him and feels absolutely sure. Julian's expression softened. And you don't feel that? He asked. Emily shook her head slowly. No, Marcus remained calm. Are you certain about that answer? Emily looked again at the dress, then at the ring, then back at them. Yes. The word felt both painful and freeing at the same time. Marcus stood up. So tomorrow, there will be no wedding. Emily nodded. No wedding. Aaron and Julian stood as well. None of them looked surprised. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. What are you doing? Emily asked, telling Daniel your answer. Emily felt her heart race again. Marcus typed a short message. A moment later, his phone vibrated. He read the response quietly. Then he looked up at Emily. What did he say? She asked nervously. Marcus smiled gently. He said, "Thank you." Emily felt tears rise in her eyes. "Thank you." Marcus nodded. He said honesty is the greatest gift someone can give before a marriage. Emily sat down again, overwhelmed. By the moment, the future she had imagined for 2 years had just disappeared. But strangely, she didn't feel broken. She felt clear. Julian walked toward the door. Aaron followed. Marcus paused before leaving. "Emily," he said, "yes, tonight may feel like an ending." Emily looked at him. But sometimes the bravest decisions open doors to the life you're actually meant to live. He gave her a respectful nod. Then the three men left the room. The door closed softly behind them. Emily sat alone. Again, the rain had stopped completely now, and for the first time that night, the quiet inside her heart finally felt peaceful.